We're raising a lot of heaven, the country parson.
Howdy, friends. Do you remember the days when you were out working out in the hot summer sun putting up fence? The breeze picks up for a moment and you stand up. You lean on one of those fence posts. You survey your work and see that your line of posts are straight. When you start stringing wire, it's going to be a strong fence. Working on my life is kind of like putting up this fence. By allowing Jesus in my life, He guides me and makes my life good and straight. I want that because then, when He looks at my life at the end, He will say, "Well done." I want my life to be strong and available for others to lean on, for them to be encouraged while Jesus works on them. Do you need to lean on the posts of my life and get rest and encouragement while Jesus works on you? Lean on, my friend. You be encouraged.
Agribusiness, brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Bryan, thank you for joining us this morning on the show. The land market here in the state of Kansas. We don't really hear much about it, but I'm sure it's extremely important to the farmers and ranchers here in the state. How is the market right now?
Well, the market is just wild, really. It's been wild for a few years, and actually it's been increasingly wild in recent times here. Land values based on USDA numbers indicate that Kansas land values have increased 58% from 2007. And if we look at sales data, which is actually sales prices for actual parcels in the state, and we look at what those prices are, they've actually increased almost twice that, so almost 112% since 2007.
What's driving that?
Well, we've had great profitability in the crop sector of agriculture, and so corn prices have been high. We've had great demand from overseas for our corn. We've got a lot of corn going into the ethanol business, and so between the two of those, commodity prices have been very high on the crop side, and so crop production in particular has been extremely profitable for a number of years. And then the other fundamental that drives the land market is the interest rates. And so we have phenomenally low interest rates because the rest of the economy is so having so much trouble. The Fed is keeping interest rates low and planning to keep interest rates low all the way into 2014. And so between the very high incomes from crop production and the very low interest rates, that combination has really spurred on the land market.
Money's not free, but it's almost free right now to borrow it, basically.
That's exactly right. And you know, one of the problems with the situation is that individuals who have made profits, they don't have very good alternatives for their money. If they look at certificates of deposit, they earn very low interest rates, and stock market is highly volatile. And so they look at things that they know, and that's if they're in production agriculture, they know about the land, and so they bid up land prices substantially. And so many of those profits that producers have made out there from their crops, that gets bid into the land market.
Are there segments in the state that are more profitable than others? I mean, we're so diverse and from one side of the state to the other.
Yes, and you know, it's the Corn Belt kind of led this thing. Iowa and Illinois, Nebraska, those prices increased really rapidly because they're more corn earlier, and so then that kind of spread into the state, and you know, from the northeast corner of the state, and of course northwest part of the state also has been with irrigated corn out there. That's been extremely profitable, and so it varies. But again, I'm emphasizing crop production here. While crop production has been profitable, that means very high feed costs for the livestock sector, and so parts of the livestock sector through this period have been suffering, trying to get adjusted to this higher feed costs. And so hogs and livestock feeding and chickens, for example, with the high feed costs, it's a little bit different story there. But on the crop production side, on average, been very profitable. Even this year with the drought, a lot of that will be covered by crop insurance. And so even this year that looks pretty serious because of the high prices out there, many farmers will get quite a bit of crop insurance payments to help cover them in this situation too.
Well, quick break, and I'm going to keep you around because I want to talk about maybe learning from the mistakes we made back in the 80s.
Agribusiness brought to you by Briggs Dodge Business Link. We keep your business rolling.
Bryan, thanks for staying with me. We're having a good time off camera. Most people can't see us off camera, but we're having a good time off camera. Let's talk about asset bubbles. I know there's some concern when it comes to assets, people taking on a lot of assets, particularly land. Is there a reason to be concerned about that?
Well, there is a reason to be concerned about an asset bubble in the land market. The rest of the economy is in such bad shape, and it's still suffering from the housing bubble that broke. And so the housing bubble was a situation where housing prices kept rising, and people got highly leveraged, borrowed a lot of money to buy houses, and then the whole thing went into a bust cycle, and we're still working through the mortgage situation. And so the whole lending system is concerned about asset bubbles because we're still trying to work our way through the problems associated with the housing bubble. So lenders have been warned about not financing a land price bubble. A land price bubble would be a situation where people bid the prices of land beyond what's reasonable based on fundamentals. And the fundamentals being income and interest rates, and so basically bidding it far too high. And so lenders are worried about it, individuals in production agriculture are worried about it, because and part of the reason is a lot of people are old enough to remember the 80s when the bubble was burst back then. It was a devastating time for producers in agriculture, and so there's lots of concern. We don't want that to develop again in the land market currently.
Well, for most farmers, I mean, either you grow or you stay stagnant. What's the fine line, Bryan? I mean, is there one?
That makes the land purchase decision a very difficult decision. Back in the 70s and 80s, I remember very vividly, individuals felt like, I have to buy in or I'll be left out because size is increasing and individuals want to get a larger size so they can compete better. And so people were faced with the decision of buying at a very high price that seemed unreasonable and maybe making it, or being left out, for sure, left behind by things that were taking off rapidly. And so in the 70s, farmers faced that. And producers are going to be facing the same kind of situation now. Land prices are taking off rapidly, and their decision is, do I participate in this thing and try to buy in, or do I potentially stay out and just be left behind? And so it makes it a very difficult decision. And the land purchase decision is a very difficult position to be in, and decision to make, because income varies so much from year to year, interest rates vary so much from year to year, and so it's a very difficult environment and a very difficult long-term decision that's based on short-term interest rates and short-term income lots of times.
Well, in the last 40 seconds we have here together, I mean, corn prices aren't going to stay at $8 or $9. And I would imagine most farmers are probably banking on that profitability when they're looking at land purchases.
It's hard to ignore the recent profitability. We get accustomed to that level of profitability, and we just need to be aware that there is an awful lot of income risk out there right now. When corn prices are that high, they stimulate production around the world. They encourage people to find substitutes for corn. There are even concerns about possibly legislation changing with regard to ethanol use of corn, and ethanol programs possibly changing. There have been some calls for that. And so lots of risk on the income side that we don't want to underestimate. And I think that was something that might have been done back in the 70s, underestimating the income risk. We don't want to be caught underestimating the income risk in this period of time either.